there is a certain civilizational idea behind the idea of Bharat. And there is a somewhat different geographical idea which I talked about. But also, connected to these is also the idea of what the Indian state as it exists today is. Um, the Westphalian sort of way is to think of it as a nation state. But I think there is also the idea somewhere in there of that we are ultimately a civilizational state. And in that we are not very unique. There are many other civilizational states in existence through history and even today. China itself consciously thinks of itself as a civilizational state. Iran is a civilizational state. In some ways, maybe Israel is an attempt to reconstruct a civilizational state. And there have been such states in the past. I mean, for example, the Greeks thought of themselves, the ancient Greeks thought of themselves as a civilizational group, in the sense that while they were fighting amongst themselves most of the time, but whenever the Persians turned up, it was quite a different matter. So this is neither a completely new nor a completely unique thing, that we think of ourselves as a civilizational state. But of course, in practical terms, in constitutional terms, we are also a modern nation state. And in some ways, that is India, and in that sense that it occupies the geographical state of historical India. So these are the various things that, incidentally, were not something we discovered today. This was something at the back of the minds of those who were writing the Indian Constitution. And indeed, there were debates about this matter in the Constituent Assembly, and that is why they ultimately, consciously wrote the Constitution begins with the term India, that is Bharat. That is why it is very important to understand that it is both, and that they are not quite the same thing, although they coincide for the purposes of the state that we are creating. So I think that is, for me, the more interesting thing. I'm not, unlike some of the others, I'm not entirely convinced that Indian civilization is all benign, and that what we consider as India is somehow something to be suspicious of. I have a much more, mix and match view of Indian civilization. Indian civilization may be very ancient, may have very ancient roots, but it has changed along the way. And to the extent that it has gone from being sort of a certain kind of civilization, and along the way picked up many influences and become what it is today, does not in any way mean that it is not true to itself in some way. In the sense that while other civilizations may hark back to this idea of something pure in the beginning, the whole essence of Indic civilization is that it is a complex adaptive system that is adapting all the time and absorbing things along the way. It's a river. It is not a mountain that we are trying to go back to. So since it is a river, and in fact, I like the fact that it has the idea of Sapta Sindhu, all these various streams flowing into the Saraswati that then flows into the ocean. That is in fact how it is all described in the Rig Veda very clearly. And so this idea is what it is about. There are different streams, and it isn't the case that all of it necessarily is unchanging or even positive. Many of these things meander off around and back, and yet through it all there is a certain continuity, and I think that is the continuity which we need to celebrate. But it is not a continuity of purity, it is a continuity of flow.